So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our chef, Hyatt, tonight. I've known him as an adventure chef. You know, I see him, you know, fishing, cooking, and just having a great time. So I just want to be eating him when I grow up. Chad has been a classically trained chef, working in a restaurant for over 10 years now, and now he's freelancing, doing you know, private events and things like that. He's also written this awesome cookbook, which I'm still looking forward to get my hands on. So, yeah, he's going to be talking about Mushroom Hunter's Kitchen this evening, and I'm judging by the look of it, it's not just talk. He's got some action with it. So, give it up to Chad.
So, I think I know a whole lot of you, which means a whole lot of you know me. But probably, I see a few faces here I don't recognize. So I'll do a little bit of an intro. I've been doing stuff with the Fungus Federation now for, I've been doing stuff like this for at least 5 or 6 years now with you guys. So when I come out here, I gotta kind of dig into my bag of tricks a little more because you guys have seen it. But for those of you who don't know me, like Peter said, I'm a chef and I'm an obsessed mushroom hunter too. And I actually, here, to get myself back on track, I didn't sleep much last night, so bear with me. I'm gonna show you the book not as a sales pitch, but it kind of focuses me and it lets you know where I'm coming from. So, like I said, I'm a chef and I'm a mushroom hunter, and once upon a time I was, you know, like you guys who are serious mushroom hunters, I'd have a fridge full of mushrooms and I wouldn't know what to do with them, even though I was cooking for a living, and I was always making the same like 3 or 4 things. You know, they're just kind of standard with, you know, eggs or pizza or pasta or stir fries or whatever. And I started looking through the, you know, few hundred cookbooks I have, and like the internet exists now, and there's really looked a lot like my cookbooks, which is to say, most of what it said about mushrooms was kind of, you know, Betty Crocker, 1950s housewife kind of stuff. And you know, there's a time and a place for that, but I wanted things that more reflected the kind of cooking I was doing every day at home and at work. And so when I whined to my friends about the lack of resources, one of them said, you know, well, why don't you do it? And since I didn't have a good answer, I did it. And there's 3 things that motivated me to write this book. The first one, like I said, is just trying to get out of the kind of old school 1950s housewife kind of cooking. And the second thing is that there's a whole lot of mushrooms that are very common mushrooms that we're taught in this country that are no good to eat, and we shouldn't even look at them. And a lot of those mushrooms are highly prized by other cultures, and a lot of them are really good once you know what to do with them. So part of my motivation was kind of to explore that side of things a little bit. And when I'm doing this stuff in the middle of mushroom season, I usually will go out and pick a bunch of those weird mushrooms and feed them to you guys to prove my point. But Kenny knows, he's eating them.
I thought so.
But there's not much going on locally right now, so I didn't have the chance to do that. So you're off the hook for tonight at least. The third one was, the third thing that really motivated me to write the book is that so much of what we're taught about mushrooms and how to handle mushrooms, how to cook them, how to clean them, etc., again, is based more on kind of old wives' tales than it is on the actual chemistry and the biology of the thing. And I have a science background, and that always really bothered me. So I wanted to kind of challenge what we're taught about and show you different ways to handle things. And so that's kind of my intro. That's as much of a sales pitch as you're going to get. So before I start, again, my usual spiel, like it's no fun. I don't think it's fun for you guys or for me if I sit here and cook one thing for an hour. It's, you know, like I don't have to show off all the complicated stuff I know how to do. Like, people pay me for that. I don't need approval. Like, I'd rather show you guys something interesting and fun. Stuff that you can do yourself, stuff you can do at home. And I think it's much more fun to show you a bunch of different stuff and let you taste stuff, because if I give you stuff to taste, then I usually can keep your attention. So I'm going to give you, I think I have 5 things for you to taste today. And I think most of them are things, I tried to be at least somewhat seasonal. Morels are just starting now. The season's starting pretty late. So I actually went into my dried stash a little for the morels. But I have some other cool things to show you too. And again, I'm gonna show you 5 things. I'm gonna jump around a lot. For that reason, please interrupt me. Please raise your hand, shout out questions, throw things at me, whatever it takes to get my attention. Please ask questions as they come up. If you have a question, somebody else probably has the same question. And I always say, if I can talk about this stuff for hours, so if you're asking me questions, I know I'm talking about something you want to hear. So yeah, I guess that's about it. I have a bunch of stuff going on here, and I'll start by explaining that, I guess. I mentioned that I like to kind of challenge the standard teachings about mushrooms, and one of the things that everybody's always taught is about, you know, trying not to get mushrooms wet, and specifically in this country, nobody boils mushrooms. You know, in Eastern Europe, people boil mushrooms. In Asia, people boil mushrooms. In Northern Europe, people boil mushrooms. But since we chose to get our cooking knowledge from the British for some reason, we're afraid to get mushrooms wet. So I think for that reason, I have 3 different things today for you with boiled mushrooms, just to prove my point. And the first one is really simple. Had I known I was going to eat a gigantic dinner right before I came here, I probably would have been a little bit less ambitious about serving you guys lots of food, but maybe everybody else did. So the first thing I got, I'm not going to talk too much about this one, honestly. I just think it's a fun thing to serve you guys. Does everybody know what wood ear mushrooms are?
I knew you were going to say that.
You probably peeked though. Say
No, I didn't actually.
But so anyway, wood ear mushrooms, they're not super common around here. You get into the mountains, they're a little more common. They grow on a bunch of different trees, generally on dead wood. I usually see them on downed wood. I had a ridiculous year in the Rockies last year. Everywhere I went, I was finding them. I was just getting bags full of them. Yeah.
Have you ever used gomphus?
Yes. Let's go back to that.
Okay.
Don't steer me too off track yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so wood ears, anyway, they're just kind of these, like, I don't know how to describe it, cartilaginous. Is that a good word? They're kind of, they don't taste very strong, but they're just a really fun texture. They're really common in a lot of different Asian cultures. Chinese, Japanese, Korean, all love them. I love making salads with them. So all I did, and you can do this with fresh ones or dried one, it works just as well. I just basically boiled the wood ears, sliced them up, and that's it. And I have this, I'm going to be a little less because we don't have a huge number of people in here. I have so the boiled wood ears, I have some carrots I chopped up, and cucumber and scallions.
How long do you boil it?
So for wood ears, they're so thin fleshed, it takes really like if they're fresh anyway, like 3 minutes is plenty of time. If they're dry, test them when they're soft, you're good. and in general with boiling mushrooms, it's just kind of, you just want to get them cooked through, unless there's something more you're trying to accomplish, like detoxifying something, that's a different conversation. So anyway, so I have the wood ears, cucumber, and carrot. I have some scallions too, some green onion, and I'm just gonna dress it really simply. This dressing is just soy, or you can use tamari. It's rice vinegar, just a little bit of sugar and a little bit of ginger. And it was kind of, you know, this dressing I usually little this, and that's about right. It's not hard to make. So I'm just gonna mix that up, that's it. Again, this one, I just wanted to give you something with a nice simple boiled mushroom thing. I figure if I give you something to taste early, you'll listen to me. At least if you like it. So let me taste it and make sure it's right. Yeah, so I'll pass that to Rosa, and I'll move on to other things. See, I told you I was going to jump around. So, actually, I'm going to go back to this one. I mentioned morels. I want to start cooking these. Okay, this of course is not going to start. Okay, at least I've learned to bring one of these. So, does everybody know what morels are? Take that as a yes. So morels are like one of the harbingers of spring. Is it harbingers or harbingers? I'm never sure. Harbingers. Been speaking English a long time and I still don't know. Anyway, I'm going to use a little bit of butter for this. I really don't cook with a lot of butter, like the stereotypical chef, but I have always found morels just work better with butter. So I've had people cook morels for me over the years in a million different ways, and this way was shown to me 15 years ago when I was in culinary school by my chef in culinary school, and it's still my favorite way to cook them. I almost always cook them like this. If I'm adding them to other things, I'll cook them like this first. So this is one thing. I'm using a lot of butter. I'm not going to put all that in there, but I'm using a lot of butter.
Because they're still dry, right?
They're right now, so I started with, and I'll talk about this a bit. I started with dried morels. If you had fresh ones, with morels, first of all, you want to clean them. Especially you're picking morels in the mountains, you're picking morels in the burns, they're going to be filthy. I don't believe anybody who says they pick their morels clean, I just assume that they just don't mind eating dirt. I'm not really like germ phobic about it, but I really don't like the taste of the grit in my teeth. The feel of the grit in my teeth is really not pleasant. So again, I'm just melting down a bunch of butter. And anyway, I'm going to add a little liquid. I'll explain what this liquid is in a minute. You can just use water. In this case, I'm using the soaking liquid from the morels. But so again, these were dried morels. I soaked them, kind of cut them up into whatever size pieces, agitated them, you know, and then move them to a different container. Same thing. When that water starts coming out without the grit, that's when I feel like they're done. And use cold water. If your morels are buggy in the first wash, use salt water, and it'll chase the bugs out. But that's the cleaning part's important. But so with the soaking water, when I changed from batch to batch, I reduced that down, and so this is just the liquid the morels were soaked in. That's all it is. And so I want to kind of just create a little bit of an emulsion with the butter and the soaking liquid.
Oh, your chat?
Yeah.
Can you hold the one piece up? I just wanted people to look one.
So here's here.
Anybody want to look at it?
So don't eat the morel chunk raw going around, please. That's my advice. Yes.
We've always heard that that morels, when they're fresh, might contain traces of monomethyl hydrazine.
So-
and you should cook them kind of in an aerated environment, like
So-
the pan or something.
Yeah, so there is no reason to be afraid of cooking morels in an enclosed space. There are certain mushrooms, the sadly called false morels. The common name anyway, the Geomyca esculenta group, and there's a couple other ones that are closely related that have that chemical that is highly, highly volatile and highly, highly toxic. And there are some stories of people actually dying cooking them in enclosed spaces. There's no evidence of anybody ever having a problem like that with morels. Morels are very much need to be cooked thoroughly, but that's the only caveat. As long as they're cooked thoroughly, most people are fine with morels. It is important to note, though, that morels do give some people a reaction. Like there is, I don't know what the percent is, maybe it's 1%, but there is some non-insignificant percentage of people that have problems with morels, even thoroughly cooked. But if you give morels to people undercooked or uncooked, most people will get very sick. There is a case actually that's going on right now in the upper Midwest I just read about, where some sushi restaurant did something with morels and a bunch of people got really sick, and I believe a couple people died. I have not heard anything more than what I just told you. I don't know the details. I need to follow up before you go telling the world about that one.
So what you're saying is no sashimi morels?
Don't eat morels raw.
Okay. No
Don't eat them raw, and don't eat them undercooked. Just even undercooked, they'll make most people sick. And when people ask me, so again, all I'm going to do here, again, I started with a lot of butter. I'm just keep on adding a little liquid. All I'm trying to do is just keep like a little emulsion going. The French would call this a beurre monté. There won't be any French test at the end of this. But I don't think everybody's salt. No. So I'm just seasoning it with salt. I'm going to talk about other things now. I'm going to let that cook. Every so often, I'm just going to put in a little bit of this liquid. Again, this is just the soaking liquid that I reduced down because I had that kind of multiple batches, so I reduced it down. So it's a lot of really good flavor in this. And that's another thing with any dried mushrooms. You want to, if you're using dried mushrooms, make sure you use the soaking liquid. There's a lot of the flavor is in there. And if you don't want to use it right away, you can reduce it down, throw it in the freezer in like in ice cube trays or in containers like this, or it's use the soaking liquid. But if you don't have soaking liquid, if you're doing this with like fresh morels or something, just use water. It works fine.
I'm sorry, did you say you soaked it overnight?
No. I just soak them to soften them up, which is a few minutes. 10, 15 minutes to soften them up. They're pretty thin fleshed. And then, when they're soft, kind of cut them up into, either in half or in whatever pieces. I cut them in smaller pieces here so I can share them around the room. Yeah. But and then that, just kind of changing the baths of water, cold water, just a couple minutes at a time, like agitate it to get the grit out of them, and then just let it settle, move to the next bath. Yeah.
Is the soaking liquid okay to drink or
I would make sure the soaking liquid, bring it to a boil at least for a minute if it's from morels, yeah. You don't want it raw. It's quite likely to make you sick. I don't think it's even well understood what the chemical is in morels that makes people sick, but it definitely needs to be cooked. Yeah.
You wash them before you dry them.
No, so I never clean morels before I dry them.
Do you take the dirt bottoms off?
Yes, I
Thank
do
you.
that. I do that. Were you gonna? I don't know. You're giving me that look.
Well, the kitty look, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought there was another hand up somewhere. No? Okay. So I'm going to move on from that one for a second. And again, you'll see me just keep playing with this every so often. People always ask, how long do I need to cook these? And the answer is, if you're not sure, cook them a little more. The way I'm cooking them like this, I can cook them all day. I'm not going to overcook them. The flavor of the morels is going to go into this sauce that's kind of emulsifying between the butter and the soaking liquid, and the fat's going into the morels. Like, I'm not trying to brown them, so I don't care. They can cook as long as I want. And I'll serve them when I kind of run out of things to say about them later. So let me talk about this one here real quick. Some of you guys might have seen me playing with this when you walked in. So this, I do this almost every time I do a presentation, but I just like talking about it. So, and everybody always seems to like eating it. So I'm doing a ceviche. Anybody's seen me before has seen the ceviche. But again, I'm not, so if you don't know what ceviche is traditionally is done with fish or seafood, where they kind of marinate it in acidic liquid, and that cooks the fish. What's really happening is the proteins are getting denatured by the acid. It's not really cooking it, but it's the same thing that happens when you cook it. Mushrooms don't have that kind of structure, so if you pour lime juice on a mushroom, it doesn't cook. So back to boiling things. And I'll talk about what mushrooms, but the idea is regardless of what mushrooms you're using for the ceviche, I'm boiling it first. And when I boil the mushrooms, I'm breaking it down the same way. I want that cooking to break it down, because the acid's not going to. It's going to improve the texture. It bursts the cell walls, and the acid can get inside, and it marinates them better anyway. So what's in here? I just have some mushrooms that are marinated. There's a little bit of chili in here, and I didn't make it very hot, because I'm sure there's some people here who don't like it very hot. And there's lime juice and there's salt. Right now, that's all that's in there. Again, the structure of mushrooms comes from chitin, which is the same thing that gives structure to insect and crustacean shells. So it's not going to break down unless you cook it. So that's why I'm boiling it first. And the question was about the wood ears and how much do they need to be cooked. This is the same thing. You just want to cook them until they're cooked through, as long as you're not trying to do some kind of detoxification process. Once they're cooked through, they're fine. So these mushrooms I used are what they would call beach mushrooms, or shimeji, I believe is the Japanese word. The scientific name is like Hysazygos something or other. Hypsozygos. That was close. Yeah. Thank you. By the way, did you guys like this little salad?
Yeah.
I'm going to take a very
That was my first wood ear salad, so very good.
Yeah.
Cool. So wood ears, there are versions of wood ear salads. I've had like kind of a Szechuan version where it's basically just kind of chili oil and scallions and almost nothing else. It can be pretty intense, but I think that's what gave me the idea to start using these for salads. So anyway, the ceviche, all I'm going to do right now, I'm just letting it marinate for a little while with the lime juice, the salt, and the chili. And yeah.
Well, what kind of mushrooms are you?
So this is what I was saying. These are what they call beach mushrooms, or sometimes they sell them as clamshell mushrooms. They're shimeji. And again, if you can remember Hypsozygos, somebody will give you a prize. If you can spell it, you definitely get a prize.
Hips and zebras.
Yes. But I've done this with a lot of different mushrooms. The mild Russell and Lactarius work very well. Lobsters work very well if you go a little further north. The mild amanitas work really well, like cookery. And actually, to keep it a little seasonal right now in the lower elevations, should be able to see some spring cookery in the next few weeks. Spring cookery are probably my favorite mushroom to do this with, because they've got that flavor a lot of people think of as fishy, which just works really well with this, and the texture holds up really well when you boil them. So, not a beginner mushroom by any means, but if you're confident enough to pick your amanitas, those are absolutely the best for this. Even for people who don't really like that mushroom in other ways, I think you'd be surprised with the ceviche. So I'm gonna let that sit for one more minute. I'm gonna tell you what I've got going on here, and then maybe I'll show you how to finish the ceviche. So this pan is pretty much just to make the room smell good. So it's funny, I often when I do these presentations, I usually stick pretty vegan because I want to be as inclusive as possible for everybody. But I got a couple ingredients. Again, the morels, for me, they need butter. I don't like cooking them without butter. But the other thing I have here, you guys probably saw these guys sitting up here. So these are cauliflower mushrooms. It's the common name for them, Spiraceus. I don't even know which species this is. This might be radicata, I don't know. The one we used to, what we called the ones here, which it isn't really. But this might be the real radicata, I don't know. It's a Spiraceus species, there's a bunch of them that look similar. These are actually cultivated. I didn't know anybody was cultivating these until about a year ago. If you've ever picked these wild, I mean, they can be little things like this, or they can be like big enough that you need a wheelbarrow to get them out of the forest. And they are awesome, awesome mushrooms, but the wild ones, how many people here have ever found a Spiraceus? Oh, most of you, that's good. They're fun to clean, right? So the cultivated ones, they're clean. Like they're clean, it's amazing. So you, instead of like picking at them for a half an hour with your dental tools and like soaking baths and, you know.
Getting all the critters out.
Yeah, exactly, and then figuring out how to chase all the wildlife out of them. It's, the cultivated ones, I'm thrilled that somebody's cultivating them, and I was talking to Belny about, you know, making his people do it, making their people do it, you know. I'm excited to get these going.
Are you getting them in a fresh state, or are they?
So yeah, these are fresh, they're fresh. You're welcome to come. We can pass one of these around, actually, if you want.
Do you know where they're growing?
So these are probably from China. Here, you can pass these anyway. Ron, will you take this from me?
So much for the locals to stay
Sam, put your hands all over it, it's fine. So anyway, these guys are, I believe, cultivated in China. They grow them in little plugs, and they're clean. I don't know if they're available retail yet, but I have a friend who is selling them, and you guys know Todd Spanier, at least some of you do. He's got these right now, and I knew he had them, so I said, let me share them with my friends. So anyway, again, another thing I like to boil. These, like, why they call them cauliflower mushrooms, I don't know. To me, this is like bundle of egg noodles mushroom. And I mean, that's what they look like to me. They look like egg noodles, and I do kind of egg noodle-y things with them. So that's what I'm going to do with these now. And there's a very, very classic pasta dish, and I forget which part of Italy it's actually from, so I'm not going to guess one and insult whoever here cares about such things. But there's a really popular dish, really traditional dish called carbonara. And it's one of my favorite things, and if your introduction to carbonara is kind of the Olive Garden version with cream and stuff like that, that's not it. Real carbonara is like 3 ingredients basically, and again, I apologize to my vegan friends for this one, but yeah, it's basically bacon or pancetta, or you can use guanciale, which is basically been cured from the jowls. And it's basically that. You cook the pasta, coat it with the fat and the stuff from your cured pork, and then you toss it. I have a bowl here that's just got eggs and Parmesan cheese, and that's it. And just a little bit of pasta water is going to turn this into an amazing creamy sauce. And that's real carbonara. And the other thing it should have, the reason I have my pepper grinder is it should have a whole lot of black pepper. So I'm gonna grate pepper while I talk to you for a minute. I'm really good at this. Been practicing. Okay. Anyway,
That is a great grinder.
what's that?
It's a great grinder.
Yeah, I was just talking about that with somebody. Yes, it's inherited, and I've had this one for a long time. So anyway, this dish, all I'm gonna do, I didn't even bother cutting these up or dealing with them before because, again, they're so clean that there's really not much to do. So I'm just gonna break them into the water and let them boil. And this pan here that was going was just, again, the bacon. At the end, after the bacon was rendered out, I put in a little bit of garlic and rosemary, just to give it a little more depth. But that's all. Rosie, you want to help me break cauliflower pieces in? So, by the way, for those of you who don't know, my wife Rosa, she's the one who does all the real work while I stand here and look pretty. And I'm not very good at the pretty part, so thankfully she's good at hers. But she does all the dirty work. She cleans way too many mushrooms, and you can see, putting samples together and stuff. So it's nice to make her blush and be embarrassed a little bit as a payment.
Does Rosa come to the fungus fair?
She usually does.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, I trick her. Yeah. She gets fed well, at least. So the cauliflower mushrooms right now, the only source I have for them is a wholesale source that I don't believe sells retail. So it's not going to help you, but they grow wild. And around here, they typically, and Phil, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I have typically around here found them on like kind of Douglas fir stumps. And I guess they grow on some pines too.
Yeah, mostly around here they're on pine. Yeah.
Oh, on pine, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. They're usually around here, they grow, and like one of the very illegal areas to hunt around here that everybody hunts a lot is a very good place for cauliflowers in my experience. So I'll answer you this one. When we did the first Mycoflora foray, was it 2016 or something? Have I been doing this stuff with you guys that long? Yeah. We did a foray, Coletta foray there, and on that one foray, and this is at a cow, which it's illegal to hunt there, so don't you dare. But on this foray, I think 7 people found cauliflowers. Wow. Different cauliflowers. So, and the wild ones tend to be a lot, at least if you get a good one, the wild ones tend to be a lot bigger than this.
A good legal place to find them is down in Pacific Grove off of Highway 68.
Oh yeah.
What is it, Pebble Beach property?
Yeah.
What do they call that?
You drive around Monterey, Pebble Beach.
Yeah.
You can find them car hunting, just looking out your window in people's yards. I've found them car hunting.
Yep.
Seriously.
Yeah. Usually at the base of the tree.
Yeah, I found multiple ones actually when we did that thing with Lisa.
Yeah, but I'd still advise that area off of 68 because you're less likely to get shot at than
of
of
course.
somebody's front yard.
No, I'm not suggesting everybody go do that. Those are my spots. but no, yeah, I'm just saying the Monterey area in general is very good. They're
the
all
Monterey
over
Pines,
for
I
sure.
really love it.
If anybody's interested, I saw cauliflowers for sale on Wild Roots in Felton yesterday for $22 a pound.
So they might be, do you know where they cultivate it, I'm assuming this time of year?
I don't. But they're pretty fresh.
What'd you find, Ron?
Cauliflowers in Wild Roots in
Cauliflowers. Oh,
Felton.
wow. Interesting.
Yeah, so I suspect that this is probably plenty. We don't have to keep
That looks like a lot.
I knew you wanted idiots.
Oh.
Okay, so I'm gonna let this boil. So this is a talking point. You talk about boiling mushrooms. Mushrooms are not vegetables. So when no, it's an important point. I'm gonna throw this glass. No, I'll save this for me. Can take this home. But mushrooms are not vegetables. If you throw a vegetable into boiling water and you forget about it and you come back in an hour, it's not gonna, good luck finding it. It's gonna disintegrate into the water. Again, vegetables get a lot of their structure from cellulose, which is water soluble. So you actually have to pay attention to how long you boil vegetables. With mushrooms, it doesn't really matter. At some point you worry about losing some of the flavor, but even then I've never had a problem with it. This cauliflowers are pretty mild flavored anyway. But the important thing is I just want to make sure it's cooked through. Cauliflower is another mushroom that you really don't want to eat undercooked. It's undercooked, it can make people sick. Not the same level morels will, but it's one you want to make sure is thoroughly cooked.
Jack, how do you know when it's thoroughly cooked?
I mean, you just see the texture changes, like even just looking at it, it just looks different, it feels different. I don't advise you to reach into boiling water to check things the way I do. It's probably, she gets mad at me when I do that. But, it's, no, I mean, they're thin fleshed, so like it doesn't take very long. I'm gonna give it an extra 2 minutes because it gives me a chance to talk about this and make sure this is hot before I add it in here. But again, with mushrooms, I'm erring on the side of making sure it's too cooked. If you're not sure if it's cooked all the way, give it an extra 2 minutes. It's not going to hurt it, is my point. So that's what I'm doing. And again, in this pan, I just have the bacon and a little bit of garlic, a little bit of rosemary. And I'm just trying to make sure it's hot when I pull this out of here in a minute. This one here, you see I just keep adding the liquid to the morels. And at some point here, actually, you know, I guess I'll give you the cauliflower next since I already started doing that in the ceviche. Okay, I think I have a plan. I'm figuring this out as I go, you know. Anybody have any questions about any of this stuff? No? Okay, so I'm scooping this out and I'm just putting it into the pan here to get it coated with the stuff that's in here that I just told you. And
that was garlic and rosemary.
yeah, so it was bacon, and then I just threw in some garlic and rosemary. And it's not crazy, the garlic and rosemary, it's just a little bit, just to give it depth.
Chad, have you done other dishes using them as egg noodle dish?
Oh yeah. Actually, one of my favorite things in my book. This is actually one of my favorite recipes in the book too, but one of my favorite recipes in the book is actually a dessert. I grew up very kind of Ashkenazi Jew, and I grew up like with one of the desserts I grew up with as a little kid was noodle kugel. And I've done noodle kugels with this, and it's like such a happy thing actually. But no, I mean, people do all kinds of things with them as noodles. There was a lot of people once upon a time, maybe not a lot, but it was popular for a little while anyway, to do, sorry, I'm trying to get all the cheese out of the grater so it goes into the cup. It was really popular to do like kind of the classic beef stroganoff thing, using these noodles, using these as the noodles for it. Which is kind of fun because you get the mushroom sauce with the mushroom kind of noodle and stuff. And so now again, I'm just mixing this in here. And I'm getting a little bit, and it's just turning to a creamy sauce. Again, all I had, it just looked like a thick clump of cheese. I'm gonna add just a little bit of the pasta liquid just to kind of give it a little more liquid, but that's really it. Like, that's how simple it is. I'm gonna taste this because I don't know if it's seasoned right.
Need more pepper?
What's that? No, it's actually pretty good. Touch of salt, but that's it. So I'm gonna let Rosa serve this to you quickly because it'll be better while it's hot. And while she does that, what's that?
The pressure's on.
Oh, she's good. She's good. It's not her first time. So I'm going to go back to talking about the ceviche now while she does that. again, I've talked about the ceviche to a lot of you before, but I like talking about it, so you guys gotta suffer through it if you want the rest of the food. There's every culture in Latin America and the Caribbean has some version of ceviche. And my favorite, and not just my favorite, but just the best one is the Peruvian one. And you guys are entitled to your opinion about that, but if it's not Peru, then you're wrong. Hey, I gave you the right to your opinion. But anyway, the Peruvian version is, it's a very simple version of ceviche, and it lets, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just better. It's simpler. It's more elegant. So again, remember, all I did here, I had the boiled mushrooms that are marinated in lime juice and chili. And the chili, like I learned this from Peruvian years ago, and the person who taught me this years ago, the old Peruvian guy, he liked it really hot, really hot. Like using the local stuff, he would use habaneros. So I'm not going to do that to you guys. I might do it to myself one of these days, but not to you guys. But so I had in my freezer some of those traditional Peruvian chilies they call ají lima. And I just took one. I only took one, so it shouldn't be that hot. And the first thing I want to do, I just want to check for salt. And it does need some salt. Big rule, never trust anybody who doesn't taste their food. Because if it tastes good at the end, they just got lucky. Seriously, you gotta taste your food. So anyway, again, these mushrooms have been marinating. I'm gonna show you now how to finish it, and then we'll eat morels. So in this container that I'm draining out right now, I just have some sliced red onion. I just covered them in cold water and just left them in my fridge for a few hours and just threw them in the cooler. But you don't have to leave them in there a long time. But if you soak them in cold water and ice water, it does two things. One, it makes them really crispy, which gives you some contrast of texture in the ceviche. And the other thing is it takes a lot of the edge off of the raw flavor, so it mellows them out a little bit. So, yeah, so I just, whenever I'm doing raw onions, I always do this now. So I'm not going to put them all in because I don't have a ridiculous, I don't want it to be all onion. So, and again, it's important to note that I'm putting this stuff in at the very end now. So I put the onion in there, and now I'm going to put just a little bit of chopped cilantro. I'm just doing a little fresh chopped cilantro, not a ton, just enough. So you understand why I thought it was kind of a cool treat to give you guys the cauliflower?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to those of you who can't eat the stuff in there, but it's, I don't know, I like that dish too much not to share it when I have a chance.
Did everybody get the cauliflower?
Oh yeah,
Everybody put one in it?
and you know, so with the ceviche now, Rosa, I'm going to give you the ceviche. Oh, yeah, that one I want. All right, this is one sample. I got to get this one while it's hot too. So.
Yeah. That is really good.
Nice job with that.
It's just Parmesan, good Parmesan. You can use like a pecorino too, either one. But this was Parm, I got a block of Parm. So the ceviche Rosa's serving now, again, all I did, so the mushrooms were marinating they were cooked first and they're just marinating in lime juice and chili and salt. And then to finish it now, I added the red onion and the cilantro. And it's important, the details matter, so I'm adding that stuff right as I'm serving it. And the reason is because this way you actually get some depth. If you let this up, if you marinate it with the onions in there and the cilantro, you just have kind of a mushy mess at the end. If you do it this way, you actually get a lot more depth of flavor, you get better texture, you'll see. And the other thing is that you'll see when this comes around in a minute that there's a little bit of boiled sweet potato in the cup with it. The Peruvians always garnish their ceviche with boiled sweet potato, and it helps cut through the acid and the heat. And they also use some other things as garnish too, but the sweet potato is something everybody has access to. It's very easy to find. So, yeah.
And the vegetarian one,
Say?
that dish is vegan?
Yes, the ceviche is totally vegan. I surprised myself, I actually organized too well. Stuff was where it was supposed to be. Yeah.
Do they do portable octopus ceviche?
I have never seen octopus ceviche, at least not where the octopus was actually just marinated in acid and, cooked that way. I've never seen it done with octopus. Octopus tends to be super chewy. It needs a long time to kind of break it down. So cooking-wise, I actually love cooking octopus, but that's another talk. But so no, I've never. I mean, with octopus, you would probably want to treat it much like you do with the mushrooms, where you cook it first and then kind of give it the ceviche treatment after it's already cooked to your desired tenderness. But so, any questions about anything that I'm babbling on about here right now? What's that? Oh, no. So the boiled sweet potato, they're just, so the boiled sweet potato is just on the side. Like normally if you were in a Peruvian restaurant or in a Peruvian's house and they serve ceviche, they just have a few slices of boiled sweet potato that are on the plate alongside the ceviche. When they put the ceviche on the plate, they'll just put a couple pieces of boiled sweet potato on the side. You don't want to mix it in, it's just as you serve it.
You're missing
And
the
again,
corn.
the whole point, it kind of helps cut through all the acid and the heat. All right. So the mushroom in ceviche is the beach mushroom. I was talking about shimeji, clamshell, hypsozygus, your chips. Yes, but again, you can use. I've used a lot of different mushrooms for it that work well. I've used oysters. I've used, I've even used hericiums actually, the lion's mane. I've used lobsters and russulas and I don't know, lots of different amanitas and.
Yeah.
So you boil the ceviche first and then?
Yeah. So boil it, drain it, cool it down, and then. Yeah. Yeah, and again, with the mushrooms, again, like a Peruvian making ceviche with fish, at least the way I was taught, you're not trying to get it cooked all the way through. It's like you want it kind of medium rare. Like, they use big chunks of fish, and and so with the mushroom, you're not worried about over marinating it. As long as all you have in there is the lime juice, the chili, the salt, it's like give it at least 10-15 minutes to really let the flavor in there. But it can stay in there for an hour. It doesn't make a difference. It's fine.
The cilantro is nice in there.
Thanks. Yeah, it's and again, the cilantro has a lot more impact if you're putting it in like the onion at the very end, right as you're serving it. It kind of gets lost if you put it in there early. So that's why I kind of emphasize that.
Chad, does the lobster lose its color if you boil it and make it into ceviche?
I mean, it doesn't stay as vibrant, but it keeps some of the color. The questions about lobster mushrooms, they got that bright red, orange color, and they give some of the color to the liquid, but they keep some of it. But the thing is, that color's all on the surface anyway. So if you're dicing it into pieces, you'll have like one little edge that'll have it. Unfortunately, unless you get tiny little babies, and then I don't know. That sounds like a fun mission.
By the way, Chad, is hypsozygus testicularis.
If you email me that, I'll remember it.
You still won't remember.
Yeah, I got almost the right genus. That counts for something in my life.
And you go into an Asian A grocery store to ask for it by that Latin.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
You get thrown out.
So okay, so I'm gonna stay, because I know I'm talking a lot, and actually I'm not doing as bad on time as I thought I was. So I want to go back to the morels. So morels, again, I just keep adding liquid to these and kind of giving them a little stir. I'm getting to a point again now where I'm pretty sure they're cooked. I just want to give them a little taste, and then I'm gonna finish. But yummy. I'm just gonna have that moment for myself there. Thank you. So at this point, if you don't want it too saucy, you can kind of let the liquid reduce out of there. I like to think of the liquid as a sauce. If you want to make it more saucy, you could put in a little cream or whatever kind of sauce base you want it to. I don't think it needs much. What I like to do with morels like this, you can eat them like this by themselves, they're great. But you cook morels like this, and pretty much all the standard spring vegetables are awesome in them. My favorite, and I think what's in the book, is favas. So you just take your favas and kind of, that have already been kind of shelled and peeled, and you can just kind of stir it in there at the end just to warm them through. If you're doing things, like, here we don't have ramps or fiddle, well, we do have some sort of fiddleheads here, but, things like that. If you're blanching them first, again, you just warm them through. If you're not blanching them first, you can kind of cook them in there until they're done. I have asparagus, because I saw asparagus. Exactly. So any of these kind of spring vegetables, artichokes even, artichokes are a lot more work to prep, but they're still really good. All of these things you can just stir in and just finish them. I'm gonna stir the asparagus in now. I'm not gonna use all of it because I think you guys deserve a good portion of morels versus asparagus, because I think you can get asparagus anywhere.
So, Chad?
Yeah.
I've read that green pepper is supposed to go well with morels. I don't agree, but I wanted your opinion.
So I have never tried with straight up green peppers. In my household, living with a Spaniard, we have a whole lot of green peppers, but I've never done it with morels. But I have done this stuff in Colorado a bunch over the last few years. And in Colorado, I mean, they're maybe not as famous for it as New Mexico is, but they love their green chilies. And the green chilies go great in here. Because I've done that a few times for them there, where I use green chilies in here instead of stirring the asparagus. I'll stir in those. So I guess the lesson in that, or to tie it back into your question, is if you roast the green peppers first, or then it might be a lot better. Because with the green chilies, I would always, have roasted and peeled first.
The roasted hatch, huh?
Yeah, exactly, the hatch. Or in Colorado, they don't do hatch. That's sacrilege. It has to be the Pueblo chilies if you're in Colorado. But I have to be careful. I got to remember what town I'm in when I'm talking to people about this stuff, because I've gotten myself in trouble. But anyway, I'm just, at this point, like, the morels are ready to go whenever. I want to just make sure. The asparagus to me is a lot better when it's not raw.
Yeah.
Won't hurt you raw, but I like it better when it's a little cooked. So I'm just giving it a minute, and then Rosie, you have a spot for me to put that down.
Yeah.
Salud. So any questions about any of this stuff?
Now, you didn't add any garlic.
I didn't add anything but the morels, butter, salt, and the soaking liquid. That's it. That's all that's in here. I want it to taste like the morels. Like, for me, this is the best way to taste morels. I love the way they taste, and this is the way I get the most flavor out of them.
And the soaking liquid, you boil it?
Well, it's being cooked in here. So, yeah. The question that's always asked by people who are vegan or who are lactose intolerant is, what do I do without butter? And I don't really have a good answer to that, because what makes the butter special in this case is that it emulsifies. Like chefs like butter for its emulsifying properties above almost anything else, believe it or not. all the other alternative fats don't really do that. So I haven't found a solution, and I know that's a lazy answer, but
Have you
I need
tried,
to work on that answer.
have you tried that Japanese cultured butter? The
Meal?
Oh, I know what you're, I've heard of it, but no.
it's really good.
Vegan.
But it's a vegan butter,
It's
you're
a
saying.
cultured butter, yeah.
No, but I'm open to trying different things. I have friends who are vegans. I have friends who are lactose intolerant. Some of whom are here today. Then are probably wondering why the hell I am not giving them stuff they can eat. But I'm jumping ahead. Yeah, don't.
Will you have time
I'm
to
hiding
sell
from
your
Bell
book
right
after?
now.
Will you have time to sell your book after, or do you have?
Yeah. So, see, I'm not giving a sales pitch, but if you're gonna give it, then yes, I will. I do have books with me if anybody, I know a lot of you guys have my book already, but if anybody here doesn't and would like one, I
If
do
you don't have
have
it, you
come
need
see
it.
me after.
Your version in Spanish yet?
Not yet.
Have you used ghee instead of regular butter?
I have not, again, for this specific idea, you want to use whole butter because the emulsifying properties of whole butter is what kind of holds it together.
Yeah. Could you use something like flaxseed that gets a little sticky?
So, the answer is I need to play with this and come up with a good answer. I don't know what the answer is. I probably should have played with this years ago,
Yeah,
but
there are a
I
lot
always
of
go, but
emulsifying agents, flavors.
But no, I mean, well, I could get off on some tangents here, but I was served something in a Michelin star restaurant in Barcelona where somebody cooked morels very similarly to this, and I believe they did it somehow with coconut fat and not with butter. And I don't know how they got it to emulsify because it does not emulsify on its own.
Right, it has the consistency of the same texture.
Right, it
but
separates,
doesn't-
it's a fat, like butter, what makes butter magical is it already is fat and aqueous stuff emulsified. And it's got the chemical to emulsify it naturally in it. So, I don't know, it's something I know I need to work on and figure out an answer to, but I don't have a good one for you today.
Maybe you suggest a mild, mustard is also.
Yeah, it's something to try, yeah. Because so anyway, from those of you who are getting morels already, hopefully you like them. And now, I'm gonna keep moving into the next topic. So I've already given you 4 things to taste with this one. But I'll let you guys talk about your morels for a second. And I can pick up the bacon that's in the pan here while you do that. Ooh, I get some. Okay.
So that morel dried is $25 for half an ounce.
Wow, I'm a millionaire.
What was your capital investment for the dinner?
Yeah, there you go. My capital investment for the dinner was quite a bit between that and the cauliflower. Wow. So anyway, anybody have any more questions about the morels before I change topics once more?
Wow.
Oh, I like that question.
Yeah, nice job.
Good job.
I have had morels served to me a million ways over the years. I always come back to this. Like, to me, it's the simplest and the best.
Tasteable.
Yeah, exactly. It tastes like what they're supposed to taste like. I don't need them crispy.
Yeah.
I've never understood why anybody would grill a morel.
I love grilled morels.
We can talk about that later.
He still doesn't understand.
So, all right. So I have one last thing I'm going to do. Some of you have seen this. I haven't shown it in a while. But I always like to end with something sweet when I do these things. And again, everybody around here knows candy caps, and everybody's used to seeing candy caps and desserts. So I'm not going to give you candy caps and desserts because that's boring. They're good, but they're, you know, you've seen that. And again, my whole purpose is to show you different things, right? So one of the things I got into when I started writing the book was I started playing a lot with candying different mushrooms. And chanterelles, for example, are great candy. Once you candy them, you just use them like fruit. But my absolute favorite thing to candy, maybe just favorite thing, maybe not even favorite mushroom, is the Amandia agaricus, like the prince. And to bring it back to the season, this is the time, if you have any spots where princes pop up, check them now. Or tell me where they are and I'll check them. That actually is preferred. And for this, so I know some of you are newer to mushrooms, some of you probably don't know what I'm talking about. Agaricus is the genus of mushrooms that has, you know, a common store mushrooms, the button mushroom, cremini, portobello, which are all the same mushroom. But Agaricus is that genus, and there's hundreds of species in that genus just in North America. It's really convoluted, confusing. If you don't want to get academic, you know, change the subject. But there is a whole section of that genus where the mushrooms in it have a natural chemical in it that has like an almond extract aroma. And they don't have a sweetness like in a sugar sense, but they have that sweet almond extract aroma. And one of the common ones, or at least one of the occasionally common ones, is the prince, which if you've ever seen Aurora's Mushrooms Demystified book, is the mushroom on the cover of that book. But that mushroom, I mean, it can be dinner plate size. Like I have multiple pictures of picking them where they're bigger than my head. You know, they can get huge. So that's, but they're one of the ones that have a pretty strong almond aroma to them. And it's that almond aroma is preserved when you candy them. It's preserved when you cook them in general. So it's really cool to use them in sweet things. And so candied mushrooms, the idea, it's like candying anything. Basically, you cover them with sugar or whatever your sweetener, and you cover them with water. You know, I usually cover them with water. There's more water will come out of them, but I don't care. I just want to make sure they get fully submerged. The sweetener makes it into a syrup, and you just cook it down until it gets like kind of thick and syrupy. And at that point, the mushrooms have the syrup in them, and the syrup has the flavor of the mushrooms in it. And with the Amandia agaricus, chanterelles, again, if you have really fragrant chanterelles, the chanterelles we have around here are not the most fragrant chanterelles, but if you have the more fragrant your chanterelles, the better this works. You can make things with them. You can just use them as they are. You can just, if they're little mushrooms, you can just leave them whole and candy them whole and just use them as garnishes like that, or as, you know, even kind of serve them as their own little treat or snack or dessert. You can cut them in pieces, use them as garnishes on things. One of the things I love to do, and what I'm going to give you, and this is from some Amandia agaricus that was picked in the Rockies. This is not the prince. It's actually, God, if I'm remembering right, Gemellata, I believe, is the species name. Not that anybody here cares. But you can take the candied mushrooms and you can puree them up and mix them into batters. You can make cake batters that are flavored with them. You can make pancakes or whatever. I've done for smaller gatherings. I think one of the small gatherings at Albion, I think I did a chanterelle jelly roll where the chanterelle was in the cake batter and the jelly was chanterelle too. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with candied mushrooms besides just like, you know, putting them on your ice cream, which is kind of cool too. But so what I have here is an almond cake. So where Rosa's mother is from, or her family still is, on the west coast of Spain, they have this really traditional almond cake that's, they call it Tarta de Santiago. And it's just eggs, almonds, and sugar. That's pretty much all that's in it. They'll put like a little citrus zest in it or something. And they'll usually put a little powdered sugar on top. So this is basically that recipe, but with the candied agaricus in there, the candied almond agaricus. And the thing you'll notice, you can start passing these out, sorry.
So it's one per person, so.
So be nice to your neighbor and just take one. But so again, this one has eggs in it, but there's no other dairy, no other animal products, but there are eggs in this one. And there's no gluten or anything, it's just almond flour. So if you've got a gluten issue, it's just almond flour.
So are we going to be getting some of the flavor from the almond flour too?
Well, yeah, but the almond flour doesn't really have the almond extract kind of smell. Like, yes, you will. You're going to taste it. You'll taste the almonds, but you'll also taste the. You'll taste the mushroom. But so what I wanted to say, besides getting the flavor from the mushrooms, what they do, if you ever bake anything and you see a recipe where it's like add applesauce and it adds moisture and stuff, you add the candied mushrooms to the batter, it has that same effect, so it makes things really moist and nice.
So do you candy caps also?
I actually, I don't think I've ever candied candy caps, but I have a lot of friends who candy caps.
So, but to really get the flavor, you need to dry, or you have to dry them, so do you dry them in the candy?
I'm not sure with candy caps that it would matter that much, because that you'll probably get a little more of the savory part coming out if you boil them from fresh. But that maple aroma is still going to come out when like if you've ever cooked fresh candy caps, that you still get that maple part of it, but you also get the kind of more savory part. And so I suspect I'm going to cut myself off mid-sentence and do this because I didn't know where I was going with that anyway. So, you guys like the cake?
Yes.
It's a super easy cake. It's really, this cake, the recipe is separate your eggs. It's like the easiest cake batter if you've ever made any kind of cake batter. You separate your eggs, you cream the yolks with the sugar, just blend the yolks with the sugar until they kind of whiten and fluff up a little bit. Stir in the candied mushrooms, stir in the almond flour. Basically whip your whites to soft peaks, or kind of like a little past medium peaks. You have a little leeway, medium to stiff, but don't over whip them. And then just fold it in, and that's it. It's really that easy.
Wow.
And it's in your cookbook.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really good.
And
So
you will
everything-
sign them.
What's that?
You will sign them if people buy them today?
They asked me to sign. I'll sign one
Are
for
you, are you gonna hear 10% of all sales tonight?
We've already got
Wait,
a.
actually, you're the one
We actually
pushing
have a
it.
signed
We'll make an arrangement. We'll settle later. Anyway, this is my big sales pitch. So I showed you 5 things. 4 of them are in the book. The wood ear salad's not in the book, but if I ever update the book, that one will be in there because I really like that salad. I can go on about this stuff all night. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I've been talking for about an hour now, so I feel like it's a little more than an hour, so I should probably wrap up. But,
And there's a few leftovers if you want to.
Yeah, and the leftovers that are here are fair game, but I'm taking these cauliflowers home.
There you go.
Nice job, Chad.